Retro.
Hi, this is Fred Tatasciore, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. The Force is strong with both of them.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we're starting the week, as we always do lately, with a look at another episode of the Clone Wars. And this just happens to be the season finale for season 1. But before we get into the exploits of Cad Bane, Jay, where can we be found around the internet?
All right. We are conveniently found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The dish is aligned. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. And as I was just saying, we're going to be talking about episode 22 of season 1 of the Clone Wars, which was the season finale. And it is called Hostage Crisis. Jay, you want to go ahead and give us the summary of this episode, please?
I would love to. So when Anakin ditches his quote-unquote meditative retreat to spend time with his wife, Senator Padmé Amidala, he finds that his leave from the Jedi interrupted by an invasion of the Senate offices by bounty hunters. Led by Cad Bane, the bounty hunters hold several senators hostage and demand that Zero the Hutt be released from prison. Despite his best efforts to defeat the bounty hunters without his lightsaber, Anakin is eventually captured. However, he does manage to save the senators from a bomb after Zero the Hutt is released to Cad Bane.
Right. So the most notable thing about this episode is the introduction of Cad Bane. We'll get to that in just a second. What'd you think about this episode overall?
I forgot how much I loved this episode, quite honestly. I will say, though, it's kind of a weird placement for this particular episode because you would have thought that the whole Ryloth arc would have just ended season 1 and this would have been a great jumping off point for season 2, but I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, you said it, the introduction to Cad Bane, amazing, and then getting to see Aurra Sing. As far as we were concerned at the time, this was the first time in animation that we were seeing her, I believe, represented in the Clone Wars. And then of course we get some romance between Anakin and Padmé, which always is a fun thing, even though it was a little cringy at times. And
stole the words right out of my mouth.
Oh gosh, we have to remember though, Anakin's still only 20. He's still just a kid, really. He's still dorky.
Well, we'll get to that part of the conversation in a minute.
But I loved it. I do. I love this episode. But I know you do. I was thinking about you as soon as Cad Bane came up in there. I was like, oh, Dennis is loving this right now, getting to revisit it.
Yeah. So I've always liked this episode, but and I can't remember exactly all the episodes from the season, but if I were to rank them, this probably would be at best the 6th or 7th episode of the season for me. And as much as I like Cad Bane, and I think he's an amazing character, and he featured prominently throughout the Clone Wars here, it's maybe what happens to Anakin in this episode. He does a good job. He doesn't have his lightsaber. We'll get into that conversation in here, but ultimately I was a little disappointed that he got taken down by the bounty hunters the way he did in this one. But, and we'll talk about this a bit here, the lethality of the bounty hunters here really demonstrate that they mean business and they're not to be trifled with. And I thought that was one of the most outstanding aspects of this whole thing. So it's a good episode. I think I'm with you. I coming off the Ryloth trilogy of episodes, it's not that this was a letdown, but those were just so strong and such a great collection of episodes that I might have even put this one before those. And okay, I'm not certain for sure that it occurs after those 3 episodes, because there's an upcoming episode or a couple episodes with Cad Bane in season 2 that actually take place before this one. It's one of the most maddening things about the Clone Wars is that they just
Right.
jump back and forth
I was
in time,
just
and they
gonna
never
say
tell
that.
you,
Yep.
yeah, when that happens. And one of the clues you get to about this is that when Anakin peeks his head up, when Cad Bane's in the Senate with all those senators, and Bane spots him, was like, he yells out Skywalker, like he already knows who he is. He's already
Right.
encountered this guy.
Mhm.
And so anyway, that's the clue that we get there. So let's start tackling some of these things one at a time. Up first, Anakin and Padme. As you just said in the summary and then in your overall thoughts about this, he's supposed to be on some sort of meditative retreat, and he's completely ditched that to spend time with Padme. And he's trying to convince her to run off with him on a vacation somewhere because he's going to be gone for like 2 weeks or something like that, and they'll
Mhm.
be
Yep.
gone. They'll be back before anyone even notices or whatever. But she's busy with senatorial work, and he is putting some pressure on her, and he's about how oh, this is more important than our marriage, or what you feel about me. And her response is, it's not more important, it's just important. And then he doubles down on the pressure, like, you know there's nothing more important. And I'm going to prove to you how much important you are to me, and by giving her his lightsaber and stuff like that. Okay, you already kind of previewed your opinion on this about how it could be a bit cringy at times, but I found a good chunk of this to be fairly cringy and really not fair to Padme. But what do you think?
Yeah, well, again, we have to remember, like I said, Anakin is still so young, and Padme is what, 5 years, 4 years older than he is at this point. She's a seasoned senator at this point. She's been queen of her entire planet, so she's definitely got the priorities down in terms of what she needs to do and what her duties are and whatnot. And not that Anakin doesn't, but I mean, he's still they're still very fresh in their marriage. And so he just wants to spend some time with his wife, which, I mean, you can't blame the guy. And, part
Sure.
of me too was kind of like, all right, Padme, like if all you're going to do is sit at a desk and work on like your holopad and phone it in, you could potentially do that with your husband. Come on. And if you had to do a little bit of video calling to the Senate, you could probably get that done. But I do think it was a little unfair of Anakin to challenge her in that way. "Oh,
Mhm.
is it more important than me?" kind of thing, because
Yeah.
that is definitely a red flag in any relationship.
It's very
And
manipulative.
it is
It's
very manipulative. And it goes back to just Anakin just not understanding how relationships are really supposed to work, because he never really had any kind of coaching, any kind of role modeling type
he's
of
not
thing. I
supposed to
mean,
have a relationship.
and he's not, but I mean, he never even had a dad to be able to
Right.
see how a relationship between a father and Shmi would have worked, is the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I kept interrupting you. I'm
No,
sorry,
you're
but
fine. No, you're good.
the I'm just not so willing to excuse him in this, because one, he's a Jedi. He's not even supposed to have a relationship. This is a life that he was not taken away as a baby and brought up in the Jedi. Like, he didn't have a choice. Qui-Gon gave him a choice in the Phantom
Mhm.
Menace. It's a hard life. He tells him right up front. And then in Attack of the Clones, Padme keeps resisting his advances because she's committed to being a senator, and she reminds him, "You're a Jedi Knight. We have responsibilities. We can't abandon those." And so he acknowledges that, and he knows that these are going to be things that are going to happen in their marriage. And yet here he is putting all this pressure on her to put aside those responsibilities and run off with him.
Mhm.
And I just don't think that was particularly fair. I mean, and then again, so like, oh no, challenge her, like you said, to declare that there's nothing more important than our love, than our relationship. And I mean, okay, he may be young, but if this is really the thing, perhaps they shouldn't have gotten married when they did. If he was,
Mhm.
if he wasn't ready for that. So like you said, red flags right here. And of course it previews what's to come with Anakin. And, by the time we get to the end of Revenge of the Sith. But yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's very
100%.
possessive of him. And we talk about attachments. and we've had discussions about attachments here. This is like the worst one here. It's not only is it, is he in love with Padme? It's the afraid of losing her, and then to a degree trying to exercise some control over her decisions in this.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. Yeah, that's a great analysis. Absolutely. And not to continue to belabor the point, but I have to say, and not that I'm blaming Padme at all, but as you said, she was the one from the beginning. I'm a senator. We can't do this. But then she drops everything and says, "But I madly, deeply love you, and let's get married." And now she's, like she almost dangles the carrot in front of the horse, kind of a thing. And so maybe Anakin's feeling like, well, if I squeak the wheel long enough, maybe she'll, give in like she has before.
Sure. And yeah, she's not blameless here. She fooled herself, I think, on the reality of the situation with Anakin.
Oh, for sure. Mhm.
All right. Well, we're like 10 minutes into this discussion, and I don't want to make it all about these two, even though it is an important aspect of this. Okay.
Agreed.
So the introduction of Cad Bane, he rides up to the Galactic Senate offices with his posse of bounty hunters. Then Aurra Sing's acting like a sniper in the background. But did you get a chance to watch the featurette on this for this on StarWars.com by any
No,
chance?
I wanted to take time to, and I didn't.
That's okay. It's okay. It's cool. Well, of course, it was all about Cad Bane because this is his first episode, and like we've been talking about, he becomes a fairly key figure in not only the Clone Wars, but then stuff that happens in Rebels, and then later the Book of Boba Fett.
Mhm.
But the featurette that Dave Filoni did was really kind of talking about the development of this character. And, they wanted to do something that was more, and this is my words, than the disposable villain of the week. They wanted to do something more, or a villain that it wasn't like the Saturday morning cartoons where the villain loses at the end of every week. And so they need to come on someone was lethal. And this was George Lucas's idea. And they based him off of Lee Van Cleef's character Angel Eyes and Sergio Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And then Corey Burton did his voice performance for Cad Bane. Corey Burton also does Count Dooku and Zero the Hutt, for that matter. He's got a lot of chops when it comes to Clone Wars.
Yeah, he does.
But that's how they modeled him. And as Dave put it, Dave made sure to compliment the hat that they gave Cad Bane, which is, funny because Dave is known for his hat. And at any rate, the idea was that,
Yes.
you see that hat, that there's danger around the corner here.
Oh, yeah,
And
and
they
I think
very
it's
much pull it off.
brilliant. Yeah, he's a brilliant character, he really is, and I'm glad that, you brought that up about not being the disposable villain of the week, "Wahaha, mustache twirling" kind of
Mhm.
thing, and this one's you knew right away was gonna have some staying power, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And, here's the thing. It's like they show up at the Senate and they are lethal. They slaughter all of the senatorial guards that are there at the platform. And then as they get into the Senate offices, they throw a bomb in a room with a bunch of them. There's one that's injured and pleading for mercy. Aurra Sing shoots him right in the head.
Yeah.
We've talked about this in the past, but George Lucas has always kind of talked about how Star Wars is aimed at 12-year-olds. This is pushing at least a PG-13 rating when it comes down
Oh,
to it.
yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But again, also, like I said, not only did we get our first appearance of Cad Bane, this is the first time we see Aurra Sing since the Phantom Menace. And all we got of her in the Phantom Menace was, her kind of 3-4 seconds overlooking what's going on in the pod race.
Right.
And she gets one line in this entire episode, but she makes her presence felt.
Oh, she does indeed. She's such a cool character. I've always loved Aurra Sing. There's just
Mhm.
something so mysterious about her, but yet, just so deadly. You just know she's just vicious from head to
Yeah,
toe, or from antenna to toe, I guess.
yeah. And she gets a couple good episodes after this in the Clone Wars as well. I mean, she's an
Mhm.
influence on Boba Fett
Right, right.
and manipulates him quite a bit in the future, which we'll be discussing in future episodes
Mhm.
as well. Actually, I guess we already covered that one in our Hondo Anaka series, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have to do that one again and concentrate on her this time around.
I wouldn't say no, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then the other, there's a number of other bounty hunters, and then there's some commando droids and some IG droids that are there as well. But the other main character in the bounty hunter squad is Robo Nino, who is the fish looking character, who apparently is a New England Patriots fan. The Armabesh on the back of his pack says Pats fan 01. So
That's crazy. I did see that in the trivia guide. And I
yeah,
love those little Easter eggs. That's just so great. I wonder who put that on there. Like who was the designer that decided to do that?
yeah, I don't know, but it's kind of funny that they let them get away with that because it doesn't really
Yeah.
mean anything inside Star Wars that we know of. So,
Indeed.
what did you think about the takeover of the Senate by the bounty hunters? Does that work for you?
Oh yeah, totally. Because I mean, you know that they're going to have the technology to be able to do that. And it was an isolated part of the Senate building. It wasn't like it was, a huge rotunda. It was a little bit more, I mean, even though it was in that kind of vaulted area, it seemed like it was a little bit more, I don't want to say secluded, but yet they knew what they were doing to be able to
Hmm.
isolate these senators. And so they kind of were fish in a barrel at that point, and they had it all planned out to get Zero out of there, and they made it happen.
Right. Yeah. For me, I couldn't decide if I thought the level of security there at the Senate was appropriate or not, because the senatorial guards show up at the platform and are like, this is a restricted area, and they're like not even really armed at that point. And then they all just get, and Cad Bane's like, son, you might want to rethink that. I can't do his voice as much as I like doing Star Wars characters' voices. I can't do his, and that drawl that he's got. And then when they kind
Mhm.
of resist that, that's when Aurra Sing starts shooting them, and then they go hand to hand on a few of those, and they get in, and a bunch of them go marching down the hall. They just kind of wait, and then they go into a room, they throw a bomb in there. And I would have thought, at least after what happened on the platform, that security would have been a bit more on to this. you know
Yeah.
i I and I guess they try and get around that by having those two commando droids disguise themselves as senatorial guards, and then modulated their voices to sound just like they did back with the rookies episode early in the
Yes.
season when they took over the listening
Mhm.
post and they impersonated the clones' voices, but they couldn't get the syntax of the speech right.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
um,
Yeah, that was definitely a good callback. And
mhm,
part of me, I keep thinking to myself, I'm of two minds because when you watch Palpatine in action, sometimes I forget that he's the bad guy, as
uh-huh.
he's standing there with Orn Frita and he's almost like, "Oh, no, please don't stop," kind of thing, and then you almost wonder if he had a hand in some of this, and that was maybe why the Senate building was so easily infiltrated, as you mentioned, and it was not as secure as one might think. So I do catch myself a lot of times being like, "Oh, no, wait, no, 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 he is the bad guy." So
Right,
don't
and
think he's being,
that's
like, Mr. Politically, like, protective here.
yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about for this episode, because I was trying to decide if this whole thing was orchestrated by Palpatine or not, and if so, to what end? Because I don't recall anything with Zero the Hutt does show up after this, but I don't recall it being like in any service to the Sith or their aims going forward
Mhm.
here. So if Palpatine was behind this, again, to what end?
Yeah.
Or
Well
was his ultimate goal to have Bane come in and wreak havoc in the Senate to create doubt amongst the people of the Republic about their ability to defend themselves? If a bounty hunter
mhm,
could come in and do this, I don't know. I'm just trying
mhm.
to figure that out.
Yeah, that's a good take. I guess my initial reaction might be that perhaps Palpatine actually was utilizing them more as a tool to even potentially take out certain senators that could
Uh-huh.
have potentially opposed him in some way, shape, or form, or were just simply in his way. But I do like your interpretation of that to just sow the seeds of doubt, if
Sure.
for nothing, for no other reason. And also that in some ways that it could make Palpatine almost look vulnerable in some ways to in the extent that not that he's necessarily looked at as being incompetent, but that people might actually sympathize with him. oh, he had no other choice. Like they had these senators all, hostage, and what else was he supposed to do? He did the right thing, so who knows how
Yeah,
he
I
would have
guess.
spun it.
To me, that it didn't work if that was his plan. And here's why. Because, Cad Bane, projects his holo image right into Palpatine's office. And it's not really mocking Palpatine, but, basically making his demands and that you're going to do what I say, that type of thing. And so Palpatine acquiesces and lets Zero the Hutt go. But then as soon as that happens, he sicks the clones on him. And he says, he basically says, you lose, bounty hunter, or whatever it is, only for Bane to get the upper hand on him again. And if the whole goal of this thing is to demonstrate to the galaxy that this war, threatens the security or everything like that, and this is the guy to protect them, well, he just made himself out to be weak in this moment. So
I could
I
see
don't
that.
know. I'm leaning more and more towards this was the Hutts and others doing someone's bidding to get Zero out of here, and this was just kind of this was not something that Palpatine had actually planned, and during this whole thing. But hard to say one way or
Especially
the other.
Anakin showing up.
Yeah. Speaking of Anakin,
That was not on his bingo card, I'm sure.
yeah, did you get Die Hard vibes from what Anakin was doing in this
I
episode?
saw that in the notes, and then I was thinking to myself, "Oh my gosh, that is like way too perfect." Because all you can think of is, he just needed to be barefoot basically at this point. Like
Right.
he lost his weapon. He's even going through some of the what is it, the duct work at some point, trying to figure out like where he was going, and then he had to, all the hostages and fighting his way back, and his wife was there, and oh my gosh, yeah, I could see it. That
Yeah.
is hilarious that you said that.
Yeah, kind of takes out a terrorist, then hides while they're figuring it out, and then they
Mhm.
get a clue that they're kind of onto him, and then he gets a radio and he's trying to communicate with Palpatine, just like John McClane was talking to the police officer. And the like. So
Yes. Oh
I
my
very much get a
gosh.
little bit of a Die Hard vibe in this, but of course he doesn't do as well as McClane does in the end of it. But
Right.
did
Well, I
occur to me there.
wonder if there was any purposeful, intention in that, because that is so spot on now that you say that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I did a little research and I couldn't find anything. Doesn't mean it's not out there. I just didn't notice it if that was the case. But some of the senators we got here, we had a Gran who refused to be taken hostage by Bane, and
He
basically says, "I'm
didn't
not
last
gonna."
long.
Yeah, and then as he leaves, Bane just shoots him in the back again, pushing
Yeah.
that PG-13 rating we were talking about.
Yeah, no doubt.
Anaconda Farr is there. We have Jacker's son, who is the Ithorian. Dantham Rude and Zen Paulness, which were based on character designs from Revenge of the Sith. There was an unnamed Christophsian. Yeah, Christophsian. That's hard to say.
Nice.
Senator. We've had Christophsis show up this season. And then Senator Chuchi, the Pantoran,
Yeah.
is here as well. No lines, but she's there.
Mhm. Yep, she was very prevalent in this one. I'm sorry, every time I see Anaconda Farr, I always say, "My my anaconda don't
I
want
kind of had a feeling.
'Cause every
We
time
won't
I hear
complete that
that,
line here on this
oh my
episode, but
gosh, yeah,
yeah,
no, we won't, but it's that we are of that certain generation, so
right.
sorry,
Yeah,
listeners, that's just where the brain goes, but at any rate, yeah, I love seeing Senator Chuchi. That was awesome. She's always
yeah.
a great addition to any episode.
Yeah, the other thought I had in all of this was, Palpatine's trapped in his office, and Orn Free Ta is the one that comes in and explains everything that's going on to him, that their senators have been taken hostage. The trivia guide for this episode said that they used Orn Free Ta because they already had the model. Otherwise, the plan was to use Masameda, and they did have a budget for this season. I guess
Sure.
George was only willing to spend so much at the time. But at any rate, so he's trapped in his office, and then at one point, clones like repel right in through his window. And I was like, people at Lucasfilm just hate that window because here he
Right?
gets taken out by clones, and Revenge of the Sith, Mace Windu's lightsaber destroys the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so whatever it is about that window, it's just made to be destroyed over and over again.
It's so true. Well, you know what? It's windows in general get busted out in Star Wars. I mean, you think about even Attack of the Clones and the
Yep.
cowhuns that came in, and then Obi-Wan blasts out the other side, and then there's always windows breaking, even in like with Luke and Vader and the whole 9 yards. So yeah, windows are not sacred things for
Right.
sure.
And then, of course, at the beginning of this episode, Anakin gives his lightsaber to Padme as proof, of how much he trusts her, how much he loves her. He's putting his life in his hands. We go through the whole, when I made this lightsaber, Obi-Wan Kenobi said, "This lightsaber is your life," which, of course, we did see in Attack of the Clones. And then there was the cutscene from The Phantom Menace where Qui-Gon is lecturing Obi-Wan about the same
Mhm.
thing. But then Bail Organa comes barging into the office, and Anakin has to hide behind the desk, which was funny in its own way.
It
Uh,
was.
that is a Jedi hiding from a senator, and yeah, okay, the jokes write themselves. But that's why she's got the lightsaber. But she does make that comment that it's heavier than she expected, and the reason why that stood out to me was I remember I could not find this interview or where it came from, but I remember an interview with Mark Hamill, and he was talking about the whole thing with lightsabers when they were doing the original trilogy was that the original thought behind lightsabers that they were going to be heavy. They were going to be something that was like swinging a very heavy broadsword around. And so
Mhm.
some of the choreography that you see in New Hope and Empire Strikes Back is based off that idea that the lightsabers were these heavy weapons. And of course, they did away with that by the time we got to the prequel trilogy. I mean, just look at the way they're used in the Phantom Menace. I mean, they're just flinging those things around willy
Right.
nilly all the time. And so again, when she said it's like it's heavier than I imagined, it's like that just made me think of that moment. I don't know if that was intentional in that regard or not.
Mhm.
Um, and of
It's
course,
interesting that you say that. Go ahead, finish your thought.
I was just say, of course, she's the one that has to give it back to Anakin. And, she hides it from Bane, successfully that entire time, even though he's trying to get everyone's comlinks and searching the senators to do it.
Right. So true. Yeah, it's funny you said that about the lightsaber because one of my initial thoughts was that maybe she just felt like Anakin wields it so fluidly that she did never would have imagined it to be that heavy. But then I thought about how later on we get the idea of the dark saber being so heavy. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And even though it's a completely different kind of a lore and a weapon, it's still kind of got that same sort of, intonation to the meaning behind it perhaps. But anyways, I have to ask you. So the whole thing with Bale barging in, not really barging in, and then when Padme shows she's like, I have a Jedi weapon," and and Bale's like, okay," kind
Yeah.
of thing. So, because I know they've always been close, obviously we saw that really outlined in the Queen's Shadow books and things like that, but I mean, I just thought that that was so funny that Padme's just tripping over her words and, "Oh, where
Yeah.
did you get that?" kind of thing, Padme.
Yeah, at the end, she's very careful to make sure she says in front of everybody, your lightsaber, I found this where you dropped it. It's so
Master Jedi.
Master Jedi. Yeah. We've
Well, and
seen
then
that a
we get
lot in
that
them.
yeah, that cute little where Anakin's just waking up and he goes to reach up to Padme's face and he's
Yep.
like, "What you looking so sad about?" And she's like,
He grabs his hand
Yeah.
real quick.
"Okay, we're not no, we can't do this right here." And then Anakin kind of figures out, "Okay, I'm a little loopy and this is not where I thought I was going to be
And his
right
head's
now."
been resting in Senator Chuchi's lap this entire time too,
Yeah.
and he has no clue about any of this.
No, no clue
And of course, she
whatsoever.
doesn't either. So it's
No.
just, they just brought in this Jedi that's unconscious because they backed him into a corner, and Robo Nino jumps out from the little security closet and shocks him and knocks him
Yeah.
unconscious there.
And
So
they
yeah,
unceremoniously, I should say, drag him right into where they're being held hostage.
yeah, yeah. And of
Not a good
course,
look for Anakin.
Chuchi knows him at this point from
Mhm.
that earlier episode this season. So
Right, right.
yeah, this is a fun episode to discuss.
It is.
Not for all the reasons I was anticipating when we decided to start this conversation, but here we are. So,
Yeah, there you go.
okay. Any last points you want to make before we wrap it up?
Oh, I don't think so. Maybe just a couple things about Zero. I have such a love-hate relationship with Zero. Just, the
Yeah.
voice, the horror, kind of
Uh-huh.
thing. And there he goes on to figure very prevalently in a particular arc that we'll be getting to eventually, which was also a little cringy. But there's always that one relative in the family, and that's Zero.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, he was introduced in the Clone Wars movie, and
Hmm.
I was on the Always On station on Disney Plus not too long ago, and I couldn't believe how wrapped up I got in watching that at the time. And so, he has a grudge against Padme when it
Hmm.
comes out because she came to talk to him about Rhoda the Hutt getting kidnapped, and of course Zero was behind it. And she managed to get a message out to 3PO of all people, who ended up getting him arrested when the clone showed up and stuff like that. So, just kind of part of that overall mystery that, we got the Trade Federation that doesn't like Padme. We got Zero the Hutt now, and others. So yeah, she's
Yeah,
building up quite the enemies list. So
always. That's what
yeah.
happens when you're a senator.
Well, that particular senator as well. She sticks her nose in there and is not afraid to get it dirty. So,
'Tis true.
all right. Well, then let's go ahead and wrap this one up. So, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust on our discussion of the season 1 finale of the Clone Wars. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to hear what we have to say about season 2, then make sure you've hit that subscribe button on your podcatcher of choice, and you'll get those episodes every Monday as we release them. We do take breaks when we have a current live action show or some other show to discuss on a weekly basis. Once you've done that, if you want to catch our thoughts on the previous episodes from the season, then check them out on your podcatcher of choice. And another good spot for that is retrozap.com, which has our entire back catalog of all previous 851 shows. And you can find some other great podcasts while you're there as well, covering other areas of geekdom. Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are one more time and where else we can be located on the internet?
Sure, we're really easy to find, and you don't even have to break any windows to do it. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. We also maintain some Pinterest pages with lots and lots of fun Star Wars ideas. And we have our 2 YouTube outlets. So we have the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music, which does have a full catalog of all of our shows. And you don't get to see any video, you just get to see a static picture, but it's still awesome. And you can leave reviews, you can subscribe, you can even interact, and we would love it if you did. So there's also our TeePublic store, and the link to that is in our show notes. And you can pick up some apparel for your Podcast Stardust needs. So you can get some t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, baby onesies, even we need to get some like doggy collars and stuff like that. I think that'd be fun. But anyways, check out the link in our show notes to that. And every purchase does help to support the show.
All right. What is the latest in cosplay?
Well, right now you can always check out what I'm up to on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. So, kind of as I was saying, the calm before the storm right now, gearing up for a couple of spring events. The nearest one coming up is going to be Fan Expo Cleveland towards the end of March. So, I'm really excited about that one. But until then, you can catch me in all of my adventures, as well as supporting and lifting up other cosplayers, creators, photographers, and the like, once again at j.snipscosplay.
Okay, upcoming on the show on Wednesday, as I was teasing on our last episode, we are debuting a new segment called Laugh It Up Fuzzball, where we are going to look at some of the various Star Wars parodies that have been out there. And we're going back to the original, the OG Hardware Wars for our first one. It's going to be quite the conversation, so make sure you join us for that. Then on Friday, we are wrapping up the week with another look at Star Wars news. So, thanks for listening to episode 852 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be